Welcome back, everybody, to the Ranting Designer. Hope everybody's doing well now that there is no longer any Formula One races to watch. I have to admit that's a little bit of what was keeping me together during these hard times. But actually, just last night I watched the brand new episode of the Grand Tour, which was awesome as usual. I'll never get sick of watching those guys. They're just supremely entertaining, and they're just car guys doing stupid stuff, and I love it. So that definitely helped out a little bit. Anyway, today we're going to go ahead and pick up where we left off with my last video, which was about the greatest car event I've ever witnessed, maybe the greatest car event in history, which was again the 2004 Monterey Historic Races, in which Ferrari was the celebrated marque. So we're going to go ahead and start off with quite an amazing car, which was the Ferrari 412P of Lawrence Stroll. Again, Lance Stroll's father. Lance Stroll being a Formula One driver, Lawrence Stroll being Canadian millionaire father of his. Now, I'll admit I thought this was one of the P3 4 cars. But I was wrong. Again, I've always been a big fan of the style of the 50s and 60s Ferraris. I think that era of design is by far the best. But I'll admit I don't know all the different models and details of all the different cars. So it was kind of interesting looking this one up. And finding out that, yes, it is a 412P, which apparently was a detuned version of Ferrari's P3 and 4 cars, basically so that they wouldn't challenge the manufacturer cars in races, but they could still win races, etc. Apparently, this one, after a little bit of racing, it was bought by Dean Martin Jr., which was a son of the legendary Dean Martin from the Rat Pack, etc. A little bit before my time, but well known, pretty common knowledge who that guy is. And apparently, unfortunately, he died at the age of 35 in an airplane accident. So it was sold to another owner before it arrived in Lawrence Stroll's hands. And since then, apparently, it has been sold to a different collector. But again, a lot of history to this car itself, which was pretty cool to read about. But apart from that, the part that I'm more interested in is, again, its absolutely wild looks. I mean, you have to figure this car back in the day, when it first arrived, had to just look extraterrestrial by just every means. I read a little bit that Dean Martin Jr. would drive it around Sunset Boulevard, and obviously would get a lot of attention because, again, I mean, just those looks. Not only the design of the car, but the fact that it's such a bright yellow. I mean, you can only imagine what people must have thought when they saw this car on the road back in those times. Just absolutely incredible in every way. Now, one thing I have been kind of wrestling with is when making these videos, I kind of want to go in and analyze the design more in much more detail, but I'm not sure if I should do that in these videos or do separate videos specifically for that. And then, just if people are interested in that, they can go check it out and just keep these as, maybe a little bit of light information on these cars so people can check out the images and know a little bit of detail. So I'm wrestling with that. If you guys want to let me know in the comments, let me know. But for right now, I guess I'll just keep them separate. And if you want to see a video of this car and listen to the engine sound that it makes, which is absolutely terrifying, I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the information below so you guys can check out a video. It's not one of my videos, but it's one that I saw recently of the car. And yeah, the sound that this car makes is terrifying but amazing in every way. So you guys can go ahead and check that out at the bottom. Alright, so next we have the Ferrari 275 GTS. Now it looks like the Ferrari 275 GTB was the first road-going Ferrari to have an independent rear suspension as well as a rear-mounted transaxle. And it was available starting in 1965. Now the GTB was the coupe version of it, and the GTS was the convertible. And apparently, the convertible had completely different bodywork from the coupe, which is kind of interesting. I'm so glad I started doing these videos now because I'm finding out so much about all these classic Ferraris, which I love so much, but I never really knew all the details behind them and the different models, etc. So I'm super glad I started doing this. I'm learning so much about this stuff. This is crazy. Our next beautiful car we have here is the Ferrari 250 GT Berlinetta Competizione. And this thing is actually a lot rarer than I figured it was. And that's the crazy thing about this event, was that I knew I was looking at some, pretty historic stuff. But again, I didn't know the background on all these cars, and now that I'm looking them up, it's just wild how much more rare they are than I originally thought. Apparently, there's only 9 of these altogether. I'm not sure if all 9 are surviving, but it looks like they only made 9 of these to begin with. And they were nicknamed Tour de France because apparently that's the first race that these cars won. Now, I looked around a little bit and I wasn't able to find exactly which chassis this was. There's a lot of pictures of one that has the number 73 on the side and another one that has the number 171 on the side, but I didn't find any of these of this particular one. But a little bit of background information on these cars in general is that it looks like they were made from 1956 through 1959. They used Scaglieri bodies that were based on a Pininfarina design. So that's kind of interesting as well. It's kind of a little bit of both designers from that era. Now, again, out of these 9 cars, there was only the 2-door coupes. That was the only body style there was, and they were powered by a 225 horsepower 3-liter V12. And again, we're nicknamed Tour de France because of that first race that they won. And they also won the Targa Florio, which was pretty cool as well. Now, apart from that, not all the Tour de France 250 GTs were race cars. It looks like there was 77 built, but only 9 of those were the Competizione models, which were the race cars. So again, a lot to find out here about these cars that I photographed such a long time ago and had no idea how far their background and their history went, which is incredible to see now so many years later. And just to round off the information on this car, it looks like one was sold, let's see here, back in September of 2014 for somewhere around just over $8.5 million. So again, I was looking at an $8 million car and had no idea. I figured it's probably maybe in the 1 million mark or so is what I figured back then, or maybe even less. But yeah, a remarkable car and a remarkable price to go along with it. That's insane. Moving on to a different collection now. We have an Alfa Romeo. It's definitely a 30s car, but it's not a Grand Prix car. It's not a race car because of the fenders and little windshield and all that stuff. But I couldn't pinpoint exactly what car it was. I looked around and I couldn't really find any images of ones that were similar enough to this to say for sure what it was. And I have to say, it's definitely not one of the prettier ones either. There's a lot of really sleek Alfa Romeo coupes from around those times, and yeah, this one is not one of their best ones for all sorts of different reasons. I mean, it has the fenders, but they're not as sleek as a lot of the ones that they did for around the time. And yeah, just kind of all around, it's kind of basic design from them, which is again kind of weird if you look at a lot of their cars from around that time. They had a lot of really nice cars, especially towards the 40s and the 50s as well. So unfortunately, this one we're going to have to go ahead and leave it as Alfa Romeo and no specific model. If anybody does know what model this is, go ahead and put it down in the comments, and I'll go ahead and add it a little bit later. And for now, we're going to go ahead and stop there. Hoping to keep these usually around 10 minutes or so. I have a lot more cars coming up, so I'm going to have to keep doing different parts of these. But part 3 is definitely going to be an interesting one. And again, thanks for listening, guys, and I'll see you next time.